Hey friends, so check this out. This is a 1.5 beat weave. It is my favorite poi trick that is based around pendulums, and it occupies a very special place in my heart because it is also the poi trick that I launched this channel with way back in 2008 when I started up my Tech Poi blog. But it is also a trick that I have been exploring in some detail lately with some more advanced variations. So I would love to go back and show you all some variations that are specifically geared towards beginners. So let's check them out. Drex here from Drex Factor Poi, sharing with you the love of poi spinning and flow arts to benefit your body and brain. And today, I'm going to take you through 5 of my favorite variations on 1.5s that are specifically geared towards beginners. Before we dive in though, I just want to give a quick shout out to the friends of the channel. Big thanks to Dark Monk, Fire Mecca, Flow Fests, Flow Toys, Pyroterra Light Toys, and Ultra Poi for helping to make the videos on this channel possible. You can learn more about all these amazing companies and the work that they're doing to support flow artists like yourself by checking out the links down in the description of this video. And special thanks to the non-business friend of the channel, that is Becca Becklinen. Thank you so very much for supporting my channel, my work, and my mission. Alright, so the 1.5, the venerable poi trick that first got me into pendulums back after I'd been spinning for about a year. This was a really fun challenge to pick up, and the thing I liked most about it was just seeing how the poi heads came together almost like they were kissing at either end of the trick. And it is also a great basis for starting an exploration of 1.5s in general, because there's a lot of things out there that you can do with them. So let's drill down 5 different variations on this move, starting with the classic itself, the 1.5 beat weave, where we have our arms separated. Now, part of what makes this move work is that we're essentially taking the basic kind of pattern of a 3-beat weave. That is, I take right hand over, left hand over, right hand over, left hand over like so, and I really exaggerate the movement of whichever hand is going over. So it's kind of like doing a really huge exaggerated weave in a lot of different ways, and that does something really specific for us. Namely, we wind up taking our hand across our waist and spinning the poi next to our opposite hip, and then when it comes back around to our native side, we have to add a whole bunch of movement into it. And first we reach back behind us, and then up next to our ears we bring around the poi forward in that giant pendulum. We're trying to take away some of the momentum on the poi as our hand goes around on its own side. So you can think of this as spin and pendulum, spin and pendulum, spin and pendulum, spin and pendulum. Let me show you that from the side. Spin and pendulum, spin and pendulum, spin and pendulum, spin and pendulum. I'll show you that from the other side. Spin, pendulum, spin, pendulum. And the cool thing is that when you have both hands doing that pattern at the exact same time, the 1.5 beat weave naturally emerges out of it. Of course, this is the version where we have our hands separated, which gives us that nice little spacing where we have the 2 poi heads coming together almost as though they're kissing, which is my favorite part of it. But it also opens us up to the next pattern on this list, which is we don't have to keep the hand that is spinning the poi right next to our hip, like so. We can have it travel along with the hand that is performing the pendulum. The biggest difference here being that we're just trying to make sure that we don't take momentum away from the hand that's crossing over our body. We're only taking momentum away from the poi that's on its own side of the body. So this becomes the difference between the hands apart version of the 1.5 and the hands together version of the 1.5. You can think of this as actually having our hands moving back and forth as though we're like rowing a boat, or our hands themselves are performing a tic-tac or a 2-beat weave going back and forth like so. You just want to make sure that you're keeping the hand that is crossing over, adding more momentum to the poi so it still crosses over top. as you do this. And of course, it switches the presentation from the two poi heads coming together almost like they're kissing to the two poi heads kind of locking together out to the side, almost like a Pac-Man mouth closing up. And of course, one of the things that you can do with this variation is I can actually take the hand that is spinning the poi over it and sneak it underneath the opposite hand. Now, this is literally the exact same trick as this, where we keep the hands together. The only difference is that I'm now looking for that weird little spot where I can stick the hand that is crossing over underneath the other hand. And it makes the presentation on this, I think, just look a little bit cooler because it kind of suggests working through a 5-beat weave instead of a 3-beat weave. But fundamentally, it's exactly the same thing as this version of the 1.5. It just adds an additional layer of interest by making our hands interact in a more specific way. I think it's pretty cool. All right, 2 variations on the 1.5 beat weave down so far. So now I'm going to take you into the butterfly 1.5. This is the trick that first started off my channel all those years ago. At least I think it is. It's either that or it was in the first couple months that I was running it. But this was really the first poi trick that I learned that I felt like I was doing some more challenging and interesting stuff with. And to break this up into its component pieces, our hands are moving around in split time opposites in like kind of an extension here. My right hand is going around clockwise. My left hand is moving around counterclockwise. And of course, we want to make sure that they are meeting together towards either side of my body. Now, the pattern that each hand is doing individually looks like this. I am taking my right hand down across my hips to get to the left-hand side, and as I do so, I spin the poi clockwise once down near my hips, and as it goes out to the side, that's where I start taking the momentum away from it, and then taking it up and over, back over to the right. So I take it down and around and spin it, and then out to the left before dragging it back to the right. So it's a drag to the right, a spin to the left, drag to the right, spin to the left, drag to the right, spin to the left. Like so. The left hand does the opposite pattern. There's a spin going to the right and a drag back to the left. Spin going to the right, drag back to the left. And when I put these two together, I wind up with this very cool pattern where rather than having the two poi kissing each other as they meet in the middle, they seem to be shearing past each other. I think it just creates a more dynamic shape personally, but your mileage may vary. Now, of course, just as I shared with you all a kind of slightly different presentation of the first 1.5 in this video, I'm also going to share a slightly different presentation of this one too. If you look back at those early videos, you'll see that there's a bunch of places where I'm not quite sure what presentation to give to this, and there are times where rather than having my hands moving around in big circles past each other like so, I'm more taking them around in half circles to either side of me, which, you know, I think it has its merits, but I think one of the best things that this does is it starts setting us up for what happens if we start bringing those half circles closer and closer together towards our body center here, because eventually we can get to the point where we're doing the same pattern, but our hands are just moving up and down in straight lines. And this is where I think this pattern really, really, really shines, because it starts turning it into something that looks more like a stacking pattern. So all I'm doing now is I'm bringing my hands up and down as I'm performing that same beat on the bottom, pendulum across the top, beat on bottom, pendulum across the top. Again, beat on bottom, pendulum across the top, beat on bottom, pendulum across the top. I'm just doing it with both hands at the same time, like elevators going up and down. You can work with either presentation that you want. This is probably better for performance situations since it eats up more room, but this definitely creates opportunities to play around with floats and the like. But as beginners, I think probably this is where you're going to want to start, and this is where you're going to want to get to as you branch out into some more advanced things. All right, so for our final pattern here, I'm going to share something with you that I have seen countless people over the past few years independently discover, and everybody thinks that they're the first person to do it. And you can find this in one of my first tech blogs back in 2008, and it is the Behind the Back 1.5. This beast right here, which I absolutely hate doing because behind the back tricks are really difficult for me. I have very, very short arms, and that makes these very challenging to do. You'll note that I am having to really pivot my upper body back and forth to avoid having the poi hit my hips on either side of my body here. Not a fun time for me. But it still looks cool in its own right. It's still that pattern of the 1.5 beat weave where whichever hand is the native hand reaches up to perform that pendulum above the hand that is sticking close to the hips. Unfortunately, unlike our 1.5 beat weave going not behind the back, there is not a version of this that involves keeping the hands together because, of course, our arms don't quite bend that way. But it's still a pattern worth knowing. I will confess that it is certainly more in the beginner to intermediate side of things rather than purely beginner, but that doesn't mean that it isn't still fun, hopefully for people who have longer arms than myself. It's not going to be that different from learning how to do a behind the back weave, which I will go ahead and leave a link to a tutorial on how to do that down in the description as well as up in the cards. But the big difference, of course, is just whichever hand is going to be on top is the one that's going to reach up and around in a very big circle and switch its poi to performing a pendulum instead of spinning, like so. Goodness. Awesome, so I hope you enjoyed my list. Please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to help other people find this video, and of course, to help my channel grow. This video would not be possible without my amazing supporters on Patreon. In particular, I'd love to give a shout out to my Flow patrons who are listed on screen right now. Thank you so much, you all rock. And if you out there watching are not currently a supporter, but you'd like to become one, you can do that by heading on over to my Patreon at patreon.com/DrexFactorPoi and signing up. There you can get access to a whole host of awesome rewards, but even better than that, you'll be helping me out in my mission to bring poi spinning and flow arts to the whole wide world. So go check that out, please and thank you. And if you want to go deep down the rabbit hole and find out just how weird Poi 1.5s get, I did a video a couple years ago detailing a theory that brings together a whole bunch of different poi tricks that we don't normally think of as being 1.5s, but I think that we ought to. I'm going to go ahead and link to that video down in the description as well as up on screen. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to get out and flow yourself today, and I'll see you with a new video real soon. Take care now. Peace.